Hi everyone. Again, Happy New Year. I'm going to try to do a couple videos today because I have a day off and that's a wonderful thing. And it was unexpected, so that's even a better wonderful thing. But I wanted to get a little bit more into the magic of quantum healing and how this is showing up in different circumstances. So again, we're going to be reading a little bit from Quantum Healing by Deepak Chopra. And this is a great book. I would suggest you have it because, like I said, I'm reading just little bits out of this, but this whole book has got amazing information. So we want to look about a little bit about what is a holistic healer. What is holistic medicine? What does that encompass? And we have to be really careful using the word healer or healing because they don't like that word very much. But there's really no other word for this when you talk about what is a holistic practitioner or what is holistic healing. You have to look at what does it mean to be holistic. So one of the people that affected his practice and that he watched this transformation with was Chitra. And Chitra had grown up in India, but she had a little idea of Ayurveda. Her grandparents' generation was the last to have any knowledge of it. So she had cancer and it had spread throughout the body. She was stage 4 and it was looking pretty bad. She hid it from her family so that they wouldn't know. And, she says the process, she just would rather them not know. So she was dwindling away. And what she had discovered was she had lung cancer. And from the lung cancer, it was causing pain. So Dr. Chopra, Deepak Chopra, asked her if she would like to start a new course of treatments as prescribed by Ayurveda. And she agreed. So I told her that her cancer was not just a physical disease, but a holistic one. Her whole body knew that she had cancer and that it was suffering from it. A tissue sample taken from her lung would show that the malignant cells had all migrated there, while a sample from her liver would be negative, yet her liver had the same blood coursing through it. Therefore, it too picked up on the signal of the disease. And this signal was coming from the lungs. This in turn affected its own functions. Similarly, when she felt pain in her chest or had to sit down because of the shortness of breath, the signals were racing through her body, going to and from her brain, sensing the pain. Her brain had to respond to it. The fatigue that she was feeling, along with the depression and the anxiety, was a brain response that had a physical consequence. So, it was wrong to think of her cancer as just an isolated tumor that needed to be destroyed. She had to take on a more holistic approach to the disease. And for that, she needed holistic medicine. The word holistic, which tends to offend orthodox doctors, simply means an approach that includes the mind and the body together. I believe that Ayurveda does this better than any other alternative, although it may not be very apparent on the surface. In fact, many well-publicized mind-body techniques, such as hypnotherapy and biofeedback, are far more flashy than Ayurveda. If Chitra had gotten sick at home in Bombay, her grandmother might have fixed her some special meals, brought her some medical herbs in a brown paper sack from an Ayurvedic pharmacy, and insisted that she stay in bed. Various purgatives and oil massage might have also been prescribed to clean the body of the toxins generated from the cancer. If there was a spiritual tradition in the family, she would have begun that tradition. She would also start to meditate. In essence, I was going to have her do a lot of these same things with a few additions. There is yet no scientific reason why any of this should work, except that it does. Ayurveda has hit on something deep in nature. Its knowledge is rooted not in technology, but in wisdom, which I would define as a reliable understanding of the human organism gathered over many centuries. I want you to go to a special clinic outside of Boston for a week or two, I told Chitra. Some of the things that will happen to you there will seem highly unusual. You are used to the hospital. She had undergone chemotherapy and radiation treatment. The hospital, with all of its respirators, its IV tubes and transfusion machines and chemotherapy machines, by that standard, what we will do here for you in this clinic will seem like nothing. Basically, I want you to get your body into a deep state of rest. Chitra was a trusting person, so she agreed to go. In part, of course, she really had no alternative. Modern medicine had done everything that it could, using the strategy of physical assault on her cancer. The initial advantage assaulting a disease is that you hope to wipe it out physically as soon as possible. The tremendous disadvantage is that the whole body receives damage in the assault to the one of its parts. In the case of chemotherapy, there is a very real danger that the immune system will become so weakened that the door is open for more cancers to develop in the future. However, the untreated breast cancer is considered deadly, and today, medicine is good at wiping it out in the short run. In a climate of opinion ruled by fear, people prefer to run the risks of the cure rather than the disease. I referred Chitra to the clinic wherein I work in Lancaster, Massachusetts. She stayed for a week and received treatments. She also learned an outpatient program to use at home that included a change of diet, some Ayurvedic herbs, and a specific daily routine, including some simple yoga exercises and an instruction in meditation. These measures look different on the surface, but underneath they are all aimed at bringing her day-to-day existence into a settled, restful state, building a foundation for healing. In Ayurveda, a level of total deep relaxation is the most important precondition for curing any disorder. The underlying concept is that the body knows how to maintain the balance unless it is thrown off by the disease. Therefore, if one wants to restore the body's own healing ability, everything should be done to bring it back into balance. It's a very simple notion, but it has profound consequences. She was also given 2 mental techniques that went directly to the root of her cancer. We will say more about this later. So, for almost a year, I followed Chitra's progress. She always listened with a trusting attitude. Yet, as she returned for each visit to the doctor, it was clear that she was not improving. Her lung x-rays were still bad. Her shortness of breath grew worse, and she began to look weaker and weaker, dejected as the disease had advanced. Her voice took on a note of panic, and finally the day came when Chitra did not show up for her appointment. I waited out the week, but then I called her home. The news was not good. Chitra's husband said that she had suddenly developed a high fever and had to be hospitalized over the weekend. For some time now, her lungs had been seeping fluid into the pleural cavity that surrounded them, and her doctors suspected that the infection had set in, giving her a grim prognosis. There was no guarantee that Chitra would ever leave the hospital again. Then, a very curious thing happened. After a day or two on the antibiotics, Chitra's fever went from 104 degrees back down to normal, which puzzled her attending physician. It is very unusual for a high-grade fever to reverse itself so rapidly if the underlying cause is an infection in a terminally ill patient. Could there be another cause besides the infection? He decided to take another chest x-ray, and the next day, her husband called me, sounding both exhilarated and confused. "She doesn't have cancer anymore," he told me jubilantly over the phone. "What do you mean?" I asked, taken back. "They can't find any cancer cells. At all. Nothing." He was almost unable to contain himself. Chitra's oncologist at the first was sure that they had x-rayed the wrong patient and wanted to take another x-ray and review the pictures again. But once they did that and saw, he is now convinced. Overjoyed, relieved, and unable to explain this sudden stroke of salvation, he regarded his wife's recovery a miracle. When I called Chitra in her hospital room, she kept crying into the phone. "You did it, Deepak. You did it." And Deepak kept insisting, "No, no, Chitra. You did it." I have never anticipated such a rapid cure and how it would result from her treatments, from an infection. It seemed to burn the rest of it out. It seemed like it was dissolving out of her body and out of her lungs. And that fever, it burned it. So it kind of peeled off the remaining layers of the cancer that was left in a process known as tumor necrosis. But the exact mechanism involved had no explanation. If there was such a thing as a miraculous cure, this definitely was one. I was certain. You know, it was amazing. My daughter had broken her leg in gymnastics, and it was like 2 millimeters from a compound fracture. She had just a very small, little, tiny piece of bone attaching that bone to her leg. And they said it would be a 9-month cast. And after that, it's about 6 months of rehabilitation to get her to be able to walk back on her foot again. And lots of therapy and this and that, because it was a very bad break. It was the tibia directly below the knee, about a half inch below her kneecap. And it was all the way through to the very back, and it had one little piece holding it on at all. And we did some of this type of work on her. And after we did a hypnosis session, she literally woke up the next morning and she actually was able to stand on her leg, because they had to take her cast off and put her in a Velcro splint. And this was all divine intervention, because if she would have had her cast on, we may not have even have known that she could step on her leg. But they had to take her cast off because they put the first one on wrong, and they had her toe pointing down to the ground, so she couldn't walk on crutches because she couldn't lift her leg up high enough to walk on it. So we had to put her in a wheelchair until we could get the cast off. And then after that, her tendons had already atrophied, so they were like, "Okay, we got to keep you out of the cast. We got to get your foot back straight before we can recast you." So they said about 2 weeks between her new cast. So within this time, we really started doing some work on healing. And after we did that session, she woke up the next morning with her splint thing on her leg. It was a massive contraption with like 8 Velcro straps and these cranks and turns and dials and all kinds of mechanisms. It was pretty high tech. And she got up out of a sleep because she had to go to the bathroom. And she had her brace on, but she accidentally stepped down on her foot getting her crutches. And when she stepped on it, she didn't have any pain. So she started screaming, "Mom, Mom." So I run up there and she's like, "Mom, I can step on my foot." I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I couldn't believe it myself. I literally, we're so conditioned that things have to work a certain way. So when she told me that, I was like, "There's no way." I couldn't even believe it myself. I honestly couldn't. So I said, "Well, we got to go back to the doctor in 3 days." I said, "Just take it easy this weekend, keep your brace on, and maybe, get in the pool and start working on some weight on your leg without full force gravity." So she's like, "Okay, that's a great idea." So she started doing that, and she was literally walking around in the pool with no pain, and I was just like blown away, blown away. So we go back to the doctor, and she walks in the doctor's with her brace on, but she walked in the doctor's office. They freaked out. They started screaming at her, "What are you doing? Why are you walking?" And she's like, "It doesn't hurt anymore." And they were like, "That's impossible." And they were having a full-blown meltdown. They ran and grabbed a wheelchair, made her sit in the wheelchair. My daughter started crying because they freaked out on her. And we went into the doctor's office and we told him that we, thought it was better. We wanted to do x-rays before we recasted it. And he's like, "All right, that's fine." So I said, "We can't understand why there's no pain." And he was like, "Fine, we'll re-x-ray it." So he re-x-rays it, and there was no broken bone. There wasn't even a scar in the bone, which for a pretty much close to a compound fracture, there's always a scar in the bone. There was no scar. So he freaked out. And I was like, but she's better, right?" He's like, "It's impossible." I'm like, but she's better, right?" And he was like, "Well, yes, but that's impossible." I was like, "Well, she wants to go to her cheerleading competition. Will you write us a medical release so she can start training again?" He's like, "Absolutely not." I was like, "Well, why?" He goes, "Because it's impossible." I'm like, I literally had to fight for 2 hours. My daughter's sitting there in tears because I'm literally going to battle. I'm like, if she truly is still hurt, I don't want her to get back on her foot. But if an x-ray is how we diagnose it, if it's broken, if an x-ray is how it fixes, and that's how we tell when it's healed, that's how we know, it's okay. It's 100% better, right? And he would just go, "But that's impossible." He was having he couldn't process this. And I was like, "I get it." Because this, he doesn't see this for every day. I don't either. So it was pretty amazing. But, the power that we have with our mind, I have seen, guys, miracles. I mean miracles. So he did let her release, and she was able to go back into her cheerleading and finish her national competitions within 3 weeks. So this is like, oh my goodness, powerful. And we can't replicate that with the best medicine available. Only something inside of you can do this. So this is, like I said, he was like, "This is impossible," because it was such a bad break, and it was, this thick, about that thick of the whole bone plate just shattered out of her bone. It was a bad break. Normally 9 months in a cast, a thigh-high cast. So it was mind-blowing. But it was the same as this. The doctor took more x-rays, and he brought out his best equipment, the x-ray machine that it's like their best x-ray machine, because he was like, "I put her on the best machine." He goes, "You put her on whatever number one or whatever it was." So they took her back and x-rayed it, and he was like, "There's not even a scar in the bone." I said, "I told you she has virtually no pain. She's had no pain for 4 days." And he was like, "I can't believe this." He goes, "But I'll write your thing." After I fought with him for 2 hours, for reals, 2 hours, the nurses were freaking out. Everybody in the whole facility was freaking out. This osteo doctor has been in business for a long time, and he has seen a lot of this business, and he'd seen and treated multiple of my family. He put my brother's face back together. So this guy's, he sees this stuff every day. And boy, he freaked out when he saw that. And then I did it to him again 2 years later with my husband. He broke his scaphoid bone, and we fixed that too. And he didn't even like seeing me no more. But this is what we can do, guys. For real. This is literally, you guys have this power. inside of you. And it is profound. So we will continue with more of the amazing journey of this. Okay, so there is a lot of research on spontaneous cures of cancer conducted in both the United States and Japan. And it has shown that just before the cure appears, every single patient will receive a dramatic shift in awareness. He knows, or she knows, that they will be healed, and they feel it. And they feel the force that's responsible inside of themselves, but not limited to themselves. It extends beyond personal boundary, and it extends throughout all of nature. Suddenly, they feel, I am not limited to my body. All that exists around me is part of me. I feel myself as a part of something much bigger. And at that moment, patients apparently jump to a brand new level of consciousness. Consciousness that prohibits the existence of the disease. Then the cancer cells either disappear literally overnight in some cases, or at the very least, they stabilize without damaging the body any further and slowly dissolve throughout. This leap in consciousness seems to be the master key, the key that unlocks all the different probabilities and possibilities. It's about what you think. It's about what you believe about yourself. It does not have to do or come in some kind of great inspiration or flash, but it will come if you are to heal your body. You will feel it, and you will know from a different part of you, you do have this power. So, Chitra was cultivating it deliberately through the Ayurvedic techniques, through the meditation, through the diet, through the practice of rest and stillness. Therefore, her ability to stay at a high level of awareness was strikingly correlated with her condition. Somehow she could motivate the absence of cancer, but just as easily she could return to it. Think of it as like being a violin string whose pitch varies at the slide of your fingertips, up or down. The word that comes to mind when a scientist thinks of such sudden changes is quantum. The word denotes a discrete jump from one level of consciousness to one that is functioning at a higher level of consciousness, hence known as a quantum leap. Quantum is also a technical term, once only known to physicists, but is now growing much popularity and usage. Formally, a quantum is the indivisible unit in which waves may be emitted or absorbed. The definition given by the eminent British physicist Stephen Hawking. In layman's term, the quantum is a building block. Light is built from photons, electricity from the charge of one electron, gravity from the graviton, a hypothetical quantum not yet found in nature, and so on for all forms of energy. Each of them is based on a quantum and cannot be broken down into anything smaller. Now they've discovered the quark. So this is going to go smaller and smaller and smaller. It's like the Mandelbrot set. It's the hologram. Both definitions are discrete, and you jump to a higher level, and in the irreducible level of a force, they appear to apply to certain cases, like Chitra. I would like to introduce this theory or state and introduce it as the term called quantum healing. to describe what happened to her would be termed as a quantum healing. Although this term is new, the process itself is not. Many cures that share mysterious origins, faith healings, spontaneous remissions, the effective use of placebos or dummy drugs, these also point towards the quantum leap. Why? Because in all of these instances, the faculty of inner awareness seems to have promoted a drastic jump, a quantum leap, in the healing mechanism within their mind. Consciousness is a force that most of us undervalue. Generally, we do not focus on our inner awareness or just use its real power. Even the most difficult moments of crisis. That may account for why miracle cures are greeted with a mixture of awe, disbelief, and reverence. Yet everyone possesses consciousness. Perhaps these miracles are an extension of normal abilities. When your body mends a broken bone, why is that not a miracle? As a healing process, it is certainly very complex and far too complex for medicine to even duplicate today. It involves an incredible number of perfectly synthesized processes, of which medicine knows only the major ones, and those imperfectly. The reason why curing cancer by yourself is a miracle, but mending a broken arm is not, comes down to the mind-body connection. The broken bone seems to mend itself physically without the intervention of your mind. Yet, a spontaneous cure of cancer, so it is widely believed, depends on a spiritual quality of mind, some deep will to live, a heroically positive outlook, or some other rare capacity. This implies that there are two kinds of healing, one that is normal and the other abnormal, or at least deemed exceptional. I believe that this distinction is false. A broken arm mends because consciousness makes it mend. And the same holds true for the miraculous cancer cure. The long-term survival of AIDS and different diseases. People say they carry on through faith, their positive attitude. All of these things make them live much longer than the ones who did not. So 5% live much longer than the average. This is confirmed in the 2% of AIDS patients who have survived longer than the 8 years, while the vast majority do not survive beyond 2. These findings are not restricted to incurable diseases. Studies have shown that only 20% of patients with serious but treatable disorders recover with excellent results. This leaves nearly 80% who either do not recover at all or only partially. Why is unsuccessful healing so far out of proportion? What marks a survivor as opposed to a non-survivor? Apparently, the successful patients have learned to motivate their own healing, and the most successful have gone much further than that. They have found the secret of quantum healing. They are the geniuses of the mind-body connection. Modern medicine cannot even begin to duplicate their cures, because no cure that relies on drugs or surgery is so precisely timed, so beautifully coordinated, so benign and free of side effects, so effortless as theirs. Their ability springs from a level so deep that you cannot go any deeper. If we knew what their brains were doing to motivate their bodies, we would have the basic unit of the healing process in our hands. As yet, medicine has not yet taken the quantum leap. And the word quantum has no clinical application because quantum physics works with ultra-high-speed accelerators. You may think that quantum healing uses radioisotopes or X-rays, but that is the opposite of what it means. Quantum healing moves away from the external, high-technology methods towards the deepest core of the mind-body system. This core is where the healing begins. To go there and to learn to promote the healing response, you must get past all the grosser levels of the body, cells, tissues, organs, and systems, and arrive at the junction point between mind and matter. The point where consciousness actually starts to have an effect. The quantum itself, what is it? How it behaves, takes up the first half of this book. And the second half then blends the quantum into Ayurveda, making the marriage of the two while trying to arrive at one answer. This is the marriage of Christ within you. The two parts of your brain, logic and reason, igniting the potential of the Christ within. This is exactly the same thing in a different language, but it's all the same process. Making the marriage of the two cultures while trying to arrive at the one answer. The scientific worldview of the West surprisingly supports the vision of the ancient sages of India. This is a journey that breaks down barriers and ignores cultural fences. To me, the whole story has to be found out. Chitra asked me for it, and so I am writing it for her and for all the people like her. Until they find an answer, their lives will still hang within the balance. So, next we will be getting into part of it's chapter 2. The body has a mind of its own. And this is some amazing information because it does have a mind of its own. And we need to learn how to talk to our own selves. It is the primary thing that we need to come together and understand how to talk to your inner world. So, a little bit from quantum healing and Deepak and some of my own personal experiences of witnessing miracles. Because, guys, I've seen this stuff work, and I will tell you, I thank God for medicine. I thank God it has such a beautiful, wonderful place. If you get in an accident, your arm is cut off, you want them to put it back on. Powerful, powerful, beautiful, beautiful things that they can do with medicine. But we also need to marry another part of medicine. It's the part that's the organic part inside of us. And that part is so powerful and potent. Nothing can replicate its precision. It leaves no scar. It has no side effects. It is beyond anything we currently hold. And this is a gift that's been sleeping inside of you. So it's time to wake up the quantum within us. And it is time to start to learn how to practice these things that will activate the physician inside of you. And as the famous words of Delphi, know thyself. And also, they taught another very important thing. Physician, heal thyself. So, with that, we'll see you on the next one, Soul Tribe. Much love. Have a great day. Love you all.